We'll begin on 110. Shana Tova, Happy New Year. So glad to see so many faces in this room, and we know that there's hundreds and hundreds more online also, so just Shana Tova to everyone. For those of you not used to this prayer book, this machzor, we'll skip along a lot, so listen for the page numbers, but I'll shout them out. But it's also clunky for a reason in that you just find your way. So whatever sort of works for you in the book, find that. If there's a poem that works for you more than the one we're saying, that's fine. Just sort of be a curator of your own experience. And we do a lot of standing in the service. So if it works for your body to stand, then you can do that. But you can always just sit a little higher in your chair and just let sort of the breath move for you. So there's no judgment. Just take this as your service in your way. And then I think the other part I'd like to just emphasize before we go into this New Year service is that we start the new year for lots of reasons before we go to our atonement. And I really think it's about gratitude. So to find yourself in this moment, resting in your chairs, your feet on the ground maybe, breathing in your body, and think of something that you just feel like was a true gift in this last year. Something beautiful that happened for you. Gratitude for the gift of life. And try to hold that energy as we go through it, even in the parts that sort of dip for you, to sort of have that way. And also importantly, as you're thinking of your gratitude, the bathrooms are right behind you. So the bathroom right behind you. So don't go through this way, go that way. And then when you're moving, just be careful. There's wires that are taped on the ground as you're sort of moving back and forth. But we're in this together and want to make sure. And if you see any of our staff people, you see Jenny or MJ or Micaiah, your clergy here are the face of what happens, but the body is really the staff team that brings all this together, our volunteers, our amazing staff people, and all of you. So we're all sort of the own curators of this experience. So thank you already to them, and please make sure to say thank you to them too. So with that, we will begin on page 120. Wherever there is something to read, read with us. Wherever there's something to sing, sing with us. We can't hear you that well anyways up here, so just la 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 from your little heart, and just make it yours. Blessed are you, Holy One, who has formed the human body with wisdom, an intricate network of channels, vessels, and openings. This wondrous structure and the flow of life within us allows us to serve you and give thanks. Let us cherish the gift of flesh and blood, honor it as God's creation. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh kol basar umaflit la'asot. We praise you, Holy One, for wondrous acts of creation and healing. We'll continue on page 123 in that middle. And just this prayer I always like to start with because it's such an essential Jewish prayer. It says that our souls come to us pure. And every morning is a chance to reconnect to that purity of self. That we have our own autonomy and responsibility for that holiness that is part of us. And that it is pure and it is naturally good. Precious above all is the soul within me, a spark of childhood innocence, curious, hopeful, loving, and good. Whatever I've done, wherever I've gone wrong, however I've been hurt, I know its light still shines. May I return and reconnect with the part of me that belongs to you, my divine core, eternal, incorruptible. Baruch atah Adonai, asher be'ado nefesh kol chai, ve'ruach kol basar ish. We give you praise, Adonai. All life is in your hand and in your care, the soul of every human being. Continue on page 135 with Hallelujah, Psalm 150. Rise together on page 141 by standing or just sitting a little taller in your seat, whatever works for you.
Amen. בעלמא דיברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דרכו בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהא שמרה במבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשא בריחו. לעילם ימחו ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו אמן.
We will continue on page 146.
Love abundant, love unstinting. Our God, you have enfolded us in love. Tender compassion beyond all bounds, your precious gift. Our fathers and mothers gave you their trust, and you gave them Torah, laws by which to live. For their sake, teach us as well. Grace us with your guidance. Loving Father, merciful Mother of us all, grant us clear understanding that we may listen, learn, and teach, preserve, practice, and fulfill with love every lesson of your Torah. May learning your Torah light up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds.
We continue with the watchword of our faith, Shema, on page 151.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam va'ed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Please be seated. We're on page 152. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'otecha v'hayu hadavarim ha'ele Asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha havadarech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha Uchtavtam al mezuzo beitacha uvisharecha leman tiskeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vihitem kedoshim leloechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem meretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. We continue on page 165. I welcome Misty up.
They went forth from Egypt on a single night, but next time the miracle will be different. Once 2 sages were walking very early in the valley, and they saw the light of the morning star. Said one to the other, "This is how the redemption will be. The dawn breaks with a single ray of light, and bit by bit the sky is illumined, until morning comes and the darkness is gone. So the redemption will occur little by little, growing steadily and gradually until the world is full of light. Do not wait for a miracle or the sudden transformation of the world. Bring the day closer step by step. With every act of courage, of kindness, of healing and repair. Do not be discouraged by the darkness. Lift up every spark you can and watch the horizon for the coming of the dawn. Look closely, it has already begun."
מי כמוך בעלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדור בקודש, נורת תהילות אוסף עליי. צור ישראל, צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתי קינומך יהודה וישראל. גלנו, גלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני, גל ישראל.
We rise.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גם מחזק מלך חפץ בחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, צומק נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי לא מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכה יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל.
Turn to page 175. And before we go into this part, I just want to offer some words. This is a section of the text that is very old, and some congregations have chosen to remove it from their text, basically because it's saying that God is looking over us like a shepherd, and we are the sheep going underneath the staff, that we're accounted for. But it's who shall live and who shall die, and it feels very predetermined. And for some of us, that theology totally works. That works just fine, to believe that we're part of this cycle where the good things and the bad things are divine ordained. And for some of us, we are like hard pass on that theology. And what I'd like to offer for those of us that doesn't work for us is to try to imagine this as holy metaphor. That the books that we're talking about of life and death, of choice, of what shall happen to us, what won't happen to us, are things that exist internally. That we are ridiculously in charge of our life, and that this is an option. It's asking us to take a turn. That the whole point of this season is to turn something, to find something good, that there's an element that we get to write ourselves in, and that we believe that the divine is supporting us in that work. So if that sort of works for you as you go forward, thinking about as you're reading the words, that this is a choice that we're choosing as part of this. And for the rest of us, the words work, that's great. So we're going to be on page 175 and read responsively for those who are comfortable. Let us embrace the day in its holiness, for this day is a throne of goodness and power. When the people of Israel do God's will, they strengthen God's power on high. But when the people of Israel fail to do God's will, they weaken, if one might say it, God's great power on high. So let this day recall your power and ours. Let it remind us of our promises kept and broken, as we remind you of yours. Let this day be a throne of forgiveness, for today we are the accountants of our souls, the navigators of our hearts, seeking wholeness and new direction. And we seek you, through signs of your presence in the arc of sacred history. I make this covenant not with you alone, with those who are standing here with us this day, and with those who are not. God of ages past and future, God of this day, as you were with our mothers and fathers, be with us as well.
Untitled
In truth, you are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal, you record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten. And when you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself. For every human hand leaves its mark, an imprint like no other. And so a great shofar will cry, Tikiyah, and a still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, Behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come into this world pass before you, like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, you inscribe judgments. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written, and on the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine and who by drought? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled? Who will be calm and who tormented? Who will live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted?
Rosh Hashanah ikatevun uvayom tzom kippur
But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness and the decree. We will continue silently through page 218, either with the words of your prayer book or the words of your heart. And when everyone is seated, we'll continue. I welcome up our President, Neil Hoffman, for a few words of Torah.
Happy New Year. Recently, my son asked me why I accepted the job of president of the temple. Why am I committing my time to growing and nurturing this community? Those are my words, not his. And my answer was this story. My grandfather, Eric Hoffman, and his family fled Austria during the Holocaust. And before my grandfather passed, my father had the foresight to have him record our family history. And there's this one brief, almost throwaway line in that recording that has always affected me. And my grandfather talks about fleeing through Germany, and they don't have any paperwork, and they enter Holland, and they're stuck in literal no man's land at the border. And his words were, they had nothing but the clothes on their back. And that the Jewish community of Holland came and fed them, took them in, and helped them. And then he goes on with the rest of that story. But the Jews of Holland helped their fellow Jews because we are tied together by 5,000 years of history and values, and they asked for nothing in return. And these people, who I will never know their names and never be able to thank them, they changed the course of my entire family. And now, as president of Temple Sholom, there are days where I feel like I'm the one who's able to lend the hand, and there are days where I feel like I'm in the position of relying on others. But that's why I'm here, both figuratively and literally, is to help make a difference. So speaking of community, I want to take this time to do a quick state of the temple. From a Temple Sholom perspective, how are we doing? And the answer is great. This has been a good year. Our numbers are up. We have seen a 77% increase in members since leaving our old building in Longmeadow. We now have over 500 people in our community and broke 300 families this year. We are no longer considered a small temple. We are appealing to a new generation of Jews. Our doors have welcomed a great number of Jews by choice, multi-faith families, the LGBT community. We are living our motto of come as you are. And we are appealing to Jews who are not in the room. We have anywhere between 10 to 15 times more people online than are in a room at any time. So we see you, we welcome you, thank you for being here with us. And for all those new members looking for ways to help Temple, we have leadership opportunities, service opportunities. There's so many. Just ask. And I remember years ago when I was thinner and less gray and in the audience saying, I have something to give. Where do I start? Just ask. We want you. Now, turning to fellowship, our lifelong opportunities, our lifelong learning opportunities have tripled in the past 3 years. The Shalom community loves to learn. I can't talk about all of our service projects, but our most recent one, the Bikes to Book Bags event last month, had a huge impact on immigrants, and we are doing God's work. Our religious school is the largest it's been in a decade, and we are overflowing from our classrooms. We now have 80 children from newborn to 13 years old in our community. So we have this continued growth. Now it's quiet in here. We don't see a lot of young people. That's because next door is full. This is a good thing, both that it's quiet in here and that it's full. From our structure, our 2-rabbi model is working. I'm pleased to announce that we have extended Rabbi Stratford for an additional year through 2024. Our staff is growing. We recently added a full-time executive director, Mary Jo McLean. You will see her around. Please welcome her. And thank you to John Bunyan and Julie Solomon for making the transition so easy and giving so much to the temple. Now let's talk about money. I know this is everybody's favorite part. Last year I talked about wanting to decrease our yearly budget, and we've been able to do that. We are not yet break even, which is my goal, but we are closer than when we started. In the last 2 years, High Holiday funding has hit an all-time record. Thank you to those who gave. To those who haven't yet, there's a subtle reminder inside your prayer book that has an envelope. The Legacy Circle has 74 committed members. We have over $1.5 million pledged, and we can feel confident that we've built a foundation for future generations. Temple Shalom is now in a situation it should outlive us all, and that is incredible. Thank you to every single person who has done that. And if you're not a member of Legacy or have no idea what I'm talking about, please find me or Bob or Carol, and we'll do our best to bring you in. That said, I want to take this opportunity to remind everyone to make your annual pledge, and the cost of one family within Temple is $1,900. So that pays for the rabbis, the buildings, all of this. And if you can give that much, wonderful. And if you can't, then other people will give more than their share and we'll cover you. But just know that is the true number. Now, as we look to the future, we must acknowledge the 5-year plan coming out of Longmeadow. It worked. We are strong, we are vibrant, and we are thriving. And now that it's worked, we need to make another 5-year plan. And with that, this is the official kickoff of the listening campaign. We will be going out asking everyone, what is important to you? And yes, that will include the discussion of a building. Our board recently turned down the opportunity to double our space in our current situation. That would have doubled our rent, and it didn't make sense long-term to sign a 10-year lease. But we are looking at a number of other possibilities. There's a church in Blue Ash that is coming up to market shortly. We are investigating that, and we're going to be coming out and asking everyone if it is important to you to have a long-term home. We serve at the will of the congregation, not the other way around. But please know that if you say a building is important to you, we are going to ask you to vote with your checkbook. So is it $1,000 important? Is it $10,000 important? Is it $25,000 important? If it is $25,000 important, please see me afterwards. But it's a decision that we have to make as a community, and then we have to support that decision, and we will make it together. So finally, I'm not asking for money, but that day is coming. Consider that seed planted. That's a little Tu Bishvat joke. Finally, as we gear up for an exciting year, this is Rabbi Champ's 13th year with our congregation. In her honor, we will be throwing a bat mitzvah party for her. We hope that everybody can join, depending on what the voices say. It may be a kickoff fundraiser for the new building. We'll see. But stay tuned for that. To end on the same theme we started, I just want to reiterate that the Jewish religion is a community and Temple Sholom is a family. And if you are like my Papa Eric and you're in a place where you need help, just ask. And like those anonymous, miraculous Dutch Jews who changed the course of so many lives for the better, if you're looking for a way to leave a positive mark on the world, please consider using Temple Sholom as a way to do that. You never know the lasting impact that you may create. Lashana Tova.
Thank you so much, Neil, for everything you do for our community. And thank you, Aaron, for being such a supportive spouse in this process. And of course, to Alex and Jake, and to Ina and Alan, who are also in town here. So thank you for your whole family, because every volunteer job like this requires lots of support. We're going to return back to our prayer book for the central part of the Rosh Hashanah service, beginning with Avinu Malkeinu, and it's 223. When we've reached that page, please rise. Again, just join with me, whatever's comfortable for you, the Hebrew, the English, the singing, all of it. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu Va'al Ulaleinu V'Tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families. Avinu Malkeinu, Kalei Dever V'Chara V'Ra'av Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness and violence and hunger. Avinu Malkeinu, Kalei Kol Tsar U'Masti Ma'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror. Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu B'Sefer Chayim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived. Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu V'Anenu, Kin Ein Banu Ma'asim, Aseh Imanu Tzedakah V'Chesed V'Hoshi'enu. Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim.
page 226. We are the people of the book. Through fire and mud and dust, we have borne our scrolls tenderly as a baby swaddled in a blanket, traveling with our words sewn in our clothes and carried on our backs. Let us take up the scroll of Torah and dance with it and touch it and read it out, for the mind touches the word and makes it light. So does light enter us, and we shine.
אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך. מלכותך מלכות כל עמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך,
We continue on page 228. Adonai, Adonai, God compassionate, gracious, endlessly patient, loving, and true, showing mercy to the thousandth generation, forgiving evil, defiance, and wrongdoing, granting pardon.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'chanun, El Rachum v'chanun, Erech apayim v'rav chesed v'emet, notzer chesed l'alafim, notzer chesed l'alafim, nose avon v'afesha v'chata Adonai, Adonai, Erachum v'chanun. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadlul Adonai iti, Unromama Shamo yachdav. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romamu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romamu. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים.
For those of you who do not know, John Bunyan, a wonderful member of our congregation, and was our executive director for a little bit, 2 years, and he, beyond being a stand-up comedian and an accountant, he's also an emergent poet. And I don't know if you've seen some of his work that's coming out, but I asked him to write something based on this particular Torah portion, which is the Akedah, which is the sacrifice of Isaac. You'll see it in the brochure there in the order of service. But we want to share the poem for you, with you, as a commentary before we begin. Give me a second. Okay. Yeah, okay. Deep breath. God said, Abraham, take your son,
Abraham said, "My Lord, which one?"
your only son with you,
Excuse me, I have two.
thine only son Isaac,
Well, why didn't you just say that?
for the obedience to me, and give him as a burnt offering to me,
My God, to what purpose would that be?
for your obedience and love.
If the circumcision wasn't enough? But Abraham went to Moriah, brought up the wood for the fire, bound his son to the altar.
Bringing Isaac to question his father, Dad, you do know I'm not a lamb.
My child,
Do you know how old I am? I'm 33 or 2. I've seen you sacrifice a few.
Abraham winked. Isaac, just be still, and raised his knife as if to kill.
Then God said, Abraham, drop the knife. You proved your love in offering his life.
Abe said, Isaac, I never would do it. It was a scam, but I saw through it.
You mean it was a test from God? A whim?
Well, God thought to test me, but I was testing him. Knife drop.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to write poetry? We're in. So we will begin the Torah reading, and it is going to be on, it'll be on, 240. And And what we're going to do is we're going to do group aliyot. So if you're comfortable, the aliyah is a blessing, to receive blessing. But because this stage is a little bit hard to get up and on, we're asking those of you who feel like called to that space to stand up in your seat or just stand up a little taller and just join us in that process. So for our first aliyah, I will first welcome our two readers up. I'll welcome Marion up and Nikki up. And the first thing we want to do is to acknowledge those of us who have endured something very difficult this year. Those of us who have made it through, often we call this the Birkat HaGomel, that we need to say a prayer for something that has been life-changing, life-threatening, an illness, a choice, all kinds of different things happen in our lives. And so our first thing is going to be on page 232, praying for the people who this applies to, and then when it's your turn, we will sing the blessing together. A teaching of our sages. In the presence of the sacred scroll, we give thanks for the blessings in our lives. Rabbi Judah, in the name of Rav, who should offer thanksgiving? Those who have completed an arduous voyage, those who have recovered from an illness or injury, and prisoners who have been set free. In the midst of the congregation, we honor those who have come through times of challenge, difficulty, or danger. Today we celebrate their survival. Together we give thanks for the resilience of the body, for the strength of the human spirit, for the precious gift of life, experience with new intensity when life has been at risk. If this applies to you or is resonant with you, we ask you to rise for the first aliyah, be chanted by the wonderful Nikki Stratford and translated into English by Marion Rubin. I have it right here. So if this applies to you, please rise if you would like. Otherwise, you'll just join with me in the prayers, which are on page 230. Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai notein ha'torah. Amen.
Amen. Vayechi achar hadvarim ha'eleh. This is not the right part. It's not the right part.
No,
Same
not.
first three words, but not right.
here.
Okay. It's very wrong. All right, let's try again. Amen. Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'eleh veha Elohim nisa et Abraham. Vayomer elav Avraham, Vayomer hineni, Vayomer kachna, et bincha et yechidecha, asher ahavta et Yitzchak, v'lech lecha el eretz hamoria, v'ha'alehu sham leolah, al echad hecharim, asher omar elecha, Vayashkem Avraham baboker v'yachavosh et hamaro vayikach et shnei na'arav ito ve'et Yitzchak beno vayivakach atzei olah vayakam vayelech al hamakom asher mar alo lo ha'elohim ben bayom hashlishi Vayisa Avraham et einav, vayar et hamakom merachok, vayomer Avraham el ne'arav, shvu lachem po im chachamor, va'ani v'hana'ar nilcha ad koch, v'nishtacha v'nashuva alechem.
Love abundant, love unstinting, our God, you have enfolded us in love. Tender compassion beyond all bounds, your precious gift. Our fathers and mothers gave you their trust, and you gave them Torah, laws by which to live. For their sake, teach us as well, grace us with your guidance. Loving Father, merciful Mother of us all, grant us clear understanding that we may listen, learn, and teach, preserve, practice, and fulfill with love every lesson of your Torah. May learning your Torah light up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds.
And so it was that after these events, God put Abraham to a test. And God said to him, Abraham, and he said, Hineni, here I am. And God said, come, take your son, your only one who you love, Isaac, and go forth to the land of Moriah to offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will show you. And Abraham arose early in the morning and harnessed his donkey and took with him his 2 young servants and his son Isaac. And he split the burnt offering wood and rose and departed for the place that God had said to him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place in the distance. And Abraham said to his young servants, you stay here with the donkey while the boy and I go further on. We will worship and return to you. We'll do the blessing afterwards now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah. Thank you so much, the 2 of you, for your gifts. For our second aliyah, we would like to bless those who've had something joyous happen in this year, something beautiful, wonderful, a simcha. And if you are comfortable, you can rise now. We'll bless you, and I will welcome Bob up he'll do the English for us. So something good. Let's bless you. Yes, I see some weddings. I see some conversions. I see some babies. That's great. Weddings, yeah. Great trips. Good health. Oh, I like seeing all this. This is good. You get a mitzvah, and you get a simcha. May the one who creates joy and fulfillment bless those who rise on this festive day in celebration of a simcha in their lives. May they remain grateful always, aware of their blessings, alive to the wonder that has touched their souls. Let them be messengers of delight, bringing warm smiles and the glow of happiness to all they encounter. And may the love and good fortune they have known inspire them to share with others. Our hearts rejoice with our friends today. We join them and their families together saying, give thanks to the Eternal, for God is good. God's love endures forever.
So all of those who experienced something good this year will join with me on page 230 for the Aliyah blessing. 1, 2, 3. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach, Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam vaed, Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam vaed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen. Vayikach Avraham et atzei ha'olah, vayisama Yitzchak bino, vayikach biyado et ha'esh ve'et ha'machalet, v'yechu shnehem yachdav, vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham avi, vayomer avi, vayomer hineni v'ni, vayomer hine ha'esh ve'ha'etzim, vayhaseh le'olah. Vayomer Avraham Elohim yireh lo haseh le'olah b'ni. Vayechu shnehem yachdav vayavohu el makom asher amar lo ha'Elohim. Vayeven sham Avraham et hamizbeach ve'aroch et ha'etzim. Vayakod et Yitzchak bino v'yasem oto al mizbeach mimal etzim. Vayishlach Avraham et yado vayakach et ha'machalet lishchot et bino.
And so it was, after these events, God put Abraham to a test. And God said, wrong spot. Sorry about that, guys. And Abraham took the burnt offering wood and placed it on his son Isaac, and took it in his own hand, the fire stone and the knife. And the two of them walked together. And Isaac said to his father, Abraham, he said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, here is the fire stone and here is the wood, but where is the sheep for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will see to the sheep for a burnt offering, my son. And the two of them walked together. And they came to the place that God said to him, and there Abraham built the altar and arranged the wood and bound his son Isaac and placed him on the altar over the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hand, and took the knife to slay his son.
And for the blessing after, at the bottom of page 230, together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, b'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
For our third aliyah, our final aliyah, I ask our readers to join us on the bima here. Yeah, it's Jared. Yep, and Anna. Good, great. And the third blessing we'd like to do is for those who have brought honor to our community and our people, our volunteers, those our donors, the many people who've done good works in this world, which basically probably applies to everyone in this room. So if you feel or you want to be honored for that, please rise. Otherwise, I'll start pointing you out for doing good. Yes, John Molinder, perfect person to start. That's great. Anyone else, please rise. It's good to have blessings. Yes, that's wonderful that you're starting. It is true for all of you. May the creator of conscience, who implants within us the desire to do good, bless you who rise today to receive our gratitude and praise. May you take joy in your achievements, find meaning in a life of service, and may you go from strength to strength. We pray that all your endeavors will prosper and that your deeds will inspire others, bringing honor to our community and our people. We join you with your friends and family in celebration of your good works, and together we say, Kol HaKavod, all honor to you, for you honor us through your deeds. And we'll do the blessings together on 2:30. Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah. For our third aliyah, I call to the Torah Jerry Kersner and Anna Foster. Yeah, that's right, stop.
Amen. Vayikra. Ela. Vayikra. Vayikra Elaf Malach Adonai Min Hashemayim Vayomer Avraham Vayomer Hineni. Sorry, it's not the right portion.
It's not the right, right? Okay. Where are you? Vayikra Elaf Achav Malach Adonai Min Hashemayim, Vayomer Avraham Avram, Vayomer Hineni, Vayomer Al Tishlach Yadacha, Al Na'ar, Al Kaseh, Lo Muma, Yata Yadati, Yir'a Elohim Ata, V'lo Chosh. Is that right? Okay. Et Banach, Et Yechidcha Mineni, V'yasa Avraham, Et Inav, V'ya'ar Tehile Ayil, Achar Na'achaz. V'tzavcha B'arnacha, V'ya'lech Avraham, V'yikach Et Ayil, Yalehu La'ola, Tachat Bin'o, V'yikra Avraham, Shem Hanakom, Ahu Adonai Yir'eh, Asher Ya'mer, Hayom Bahar Adonai, Yir'eh V'ya'ikra Malach.
No.
This one? Okay. Here we go. A little extra Torah. It's all good.
Amen. Vayikra Melach Adonai El Avraham Shenis Min Hashamayim Vayomer Vi Nishmati Ne'um Adonai Ki Yaz Asher Atzita Es Adaber Hazeh V'lo Chashakta Es Binecha Es Yechidecha Ki Varech Avarechecha V'harba Arbe Es Aracha Kakatzuv Hashamayim V'chacho Asher Al Safat Chaim Vayiresh Zarecha Eshar Ovav Vayidbarechu Bezaracha Kol Goyei Ha'aretz Ekev Asher Shemata Bakoli Vayashav Abraham El Ne'erav Vayikumu Vayechlu Yachdav El Ba'ar Shava Vayeshev Abraham Ba'ar Shava.
And a messenger of Adonai called to Abraham from heaven a second time, and said, By myself I swear, declares Adonai, that because you have acted thus, and would not deny me your son, your only one, I will bless you greatly, and I will multiply your seed like stars in the sky, and like sand by the sea. Your seed shall possess the gate of its foes, and all the earth's nations shall be blessed through your seed, because you hearkened to my voice. And Abraham returned to his young servants, and they rose, and together they walked to Beer-sheba, and Abraham dwelt in Beer-sheba.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gerson. Thank you. Okay, let's bless after us. Our honors here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. With the living Torah in front of us and acknowledging that though we talked of joy and of triumph and of giving, that for many of us in this room we've experienced great hardship and a need for healing in all kinds of ways. And so our energy extends from this powerful Torah that has persevered throughout the generations, reminding us that even in our darkest moments, even in the deep valleys, there's possibility for light and hope. So if you can just sort of think about the world right now, just that big old world, and send that positive energy out of healing, of wholeness, in our spirits, in our minds, in our bodies, to the places in need of prayer, in the need of action, places of poverty, the places of war, the places affected by famine and bloodshed and storm. And then bring that energy a little closer into the community around us. So many pockets and places of people who are struggling. And then closer still, feeling that vibrational energy extending to that family unit, to your closest friends, to those in hospital rooms and nursing facilities, those encountering difficulties, feeling the weight of grief or addiction. And finally, bring it to yourself, because we're all in need of wholeness in some way. In our community, we pray for the healing, the refuah shlema of body, mind, and spirit for Barry Ostern, Corinne Belford, Robert Bilgrad, Davida Bilgrad, Deborah Birch, Ira Bluestein, Obadiah Booker, Sheila Boniface, Kenneth Bernstein, Dan Browning, Harold Beyer, Cindy Cohen, Marla Cupp, Zoe Gertie, Andy Goldstein, Charles Gutman, Hannah Gutman, Judith Gutman, Bob Grossman, Jonathan Grossman, Jennifer Hall, Elaine Heightfield, Nancy Hill, Jim Hochberg, Suzanne Horton, Sylvie Huker, Jack Huker, Marty Ingram, Kelly Jankovic, Yael Kraus, Jim Kane, Jamie Krasweski, Daniel Lassie, Joan Lieb, Steve Levinson, Barry Levy, Zila Gershon Ben Hanoch Lieb HaKohen, Grayson Malkin, Eleanor Meshkow, Leslie Lisnick Pate, Eva Meninci, Vincent Meninci, Ronnie McGillis, Ginny Meyer, Lou Meerman, Leslie Payne, Deb Pelletier, Phil Ryan, Joanne Reich, Evelyn Roos, Margot Rose, Larry Rubin, Rosalie Segal, Lauren Sherman, Louis Simon, Barry Simon, Jason Snyder, Charlie Spector, Sherry Stapleton, Mahaya Stoneman, Jim Tanner, Tom Thornton, Stu Warschauer, Chaim Ben Yaakov Nechama, Gail Zakim. To these names we add Misha Berach Avotenu v'Imotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Vivrachet V'Rifei et Cholim ha'ele HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleihem L'chach Liman V'Tam Chazikam V'Yishlach Lahem Mehera Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh V'Refuat HaGuf Hashtab Elav Yizman Kariv V'Nomar Amen.
Before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Makor HaBracha Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say
We'll continue with the lifting and dressing of the Torah. I invite Justin and Margot to come up, and we'll rise together if you're physically able on page 246. Just come on this side so he can. All right, you got it. Be careful.
Torah shersha Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe.
Please be seated. I welcome up Ed Goldman. We'll begin our Haftarah blessings on 247, and you'll see that Ed has written something beautiful from the perspective of Hannah. So if you'd like to follow along with the traditional text, it is in the book, beginning on 247 going through, but I know you'll delight in hearing Ed's version that he wrote himself.
Verse 1. And here I am, Hannah, from the lowlands near Kiryat Yarim, daughter of Talia, daughter of Elishira, daughter of Shulamit, daughter of Maya, a priestess from Zanoah. Oh, my husband Elkanah, he loved me dearly, but when I didn't get pregnant, he also married Peninnah, nodding to the pressure brought to bear by our community, which was generous in many things, but especially brutal to a woman who could not or would not produce. My dear Elkanah fulfilled his obligations set down by the priest Eli and his priest sons to go to Shiloh and kill animals in the name of God. Each year my Elkanah dutifully killed the animals and gave portions to Peninnah and her children and to me. Often he'd slip me a little extra because he loved me and thought it would make me feel better, but instead it was bitter in my mouth and hard to swallow. The local canines would have a special treat that night instead. Verse 6. And Peninnah would taunt me, saying that I didn't get pregnant because God wanted to shame me. Most of the time I didn't believe my God would do that, but I must admit that in weaker moments I did. And every year that our family journeyed to the place they called the house of God, Peninnah bullied me, and I would often cry, at times because of my own predicament, and at times because of Peninnah's. How much hurt must she have endured to feel the need to lash out at me this way? And my dearest would say, Hannah Lee, why are you crying and not eating? Why are you so sad? Am I not more devoted to you than 10 little ones? And indeed, he was. And how could he know what a woman endures, what I have endured? So as the others finished their meal, I stood up and passed Eli the priest, who was sitting near the entrance to the house of God. Verse 10. And I must admit there was a bitterness creeping up my spine, and I began to talk with God, as I often did. And I felt my body convulsing with sadness, and I could not stop weeping. I wept until my tears refused to flow, then suddenly a shift. My heart felt new and warm and red, and I resolved that I would not define myself by a lack, even if others did. And I felt God's generosity seeping around my shoulders and down my back, displacing the bitters through my feet to a place outside my body. And I saw the image of a small being afloat in the currents, and I sensed the goodness and strength and humility of a creature of God, unsullied yet by life on this earth. And as my tears of grief turned into a shower of joy, I felt the eyes of Eli the priest on my neck. I realized that all this time I'd been praying from my heart, and though my lips had moved, I had not spoken a word out loud. So naturally I was taken for a drunkard by the priest at the gate. Predictably, he said to me, How long will you continue this drunken spectacle? Where is your dignity, woman? Choose some galbanum root and dry out before your husband gets wind of this. Well, it took all my power not to take a candlestick to his condescending dreadlocks. Instead, I took a long breath, temporarily swallowed my indignance, and explained that God and I were having a moment, and that God's love had been pouring silently in and out of my heart. Verse 16. I said, please do not pass judgment on me without looking closer at who I really am and at the anguish that has shaped my life. In fact, do not pass judgment at all, as that is God's work, not the work of humans, even one as pious as yourself. Though my insides darted behind the nearest rock in expectation of the coming storm, my body, God bless it, remained riveted to the ground in what I realized was a slightly forward-leaning stance. Eli's face retreated, and his eyes crinkled ever so slightly as he began to see me more clearly. Then go in peace, he nodded unexpectedly, and may your bond with God continue to grow. Relieved, though still wary of lurking insincerity, I thanked him profusely and headed for what was left of the buffet. My appetite satisfied, I felt a contentment I barely recognized. Next morning we woke, prayed the dawn prayers, and set out for our home in Ramah. I was ready for the next piece of my life, and as I made love to Elkanah in the following weeks, I glimpsed the angels swirling and smiling in our space. And so it was that I found myself pregnant, and after a humbling several months during which doubt was my frequent companion, and to the dismay of some around me, I bore a chubby, hairy, beautiful boy. I named him Shmuel, Samuel, because God heard me and saw me, and I was able to share my love with another generation. And you should have heard Elkanah, jumping and screeching like a lowland hyena, bending the ear of any who would listen about the beauty and perfection of the miracle who was our son. And ever dutiful, he brought the family to the house of God to give thanks. Penina seemed resigned that she and her children were no longer the center of attention, and the bullying faded, though the emotional distance remained. I didn't go with the family to the house of God the next few years until Samuel was weaned. And truth be told, I may have nursed him a wee bit longer than usual, knowing what was to come next. All too soon he was a sturdy, toddling armful of joy, industrious and inquisitive and sensitive, and it was time. I made Samuel a fancy frock against his protests. We brought the animals and the fine-grained flowers and the flagon of our best wine and the clay jug I made with my own hands, and we trekked to Shiloh once again. The animals were killed, and I brought Samuel to Eli the priest. And I said, "Perhaps you remember me, sir. I am the woman who was here speaking with you some years ago, after pouring out my heart to God." I thought he might remember me, and the look on his face left no doubt. I had hoped for a beautiful child such as this, I said, and here he is. And now I lend him back to God, to serve God as long as he lives. With one final mama bear hug, and overflowing with tear-flavored joy, I let Samuel go. It wasn't like I'd never see him again. In fact, we met frequently as the years went by. Sometimes I was sad that Samuel did not grow up here at home with us. That's when my dear Elkanah would remind me of his love for me, of the wonder and beauty of our son, and of my special relationship with God. In those moments, I felt God closer to me than ever. And I realized I forgot to say the blessings. We'll do the afters? Okay. The blessings after the Haftarah are on page 258. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzadik bechol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh, hamdaber umkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek. Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu, v'ne'emanim devarecha, U'devarechad midvarecha, achor lo yashuv rekam, ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman atah, baruch atah Adonai, ha'el ha'ne'eman bechol devarav. Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu, v'la'luvat nefesh toshia, bimheira be'yameinu, baruch atah Adonai, mesameach Tzion bevaneha. Samcheinu, Adonai Eloheinu, Beliahu Hanavi Avdecha, Uvmalchut Beit David Meshichecha, Bimhera Yavo, Ve'agel Libenu, Al Kiso Lo Yeshev Zar, V'lo Yinchalu Od Acherim Et Kevodo, Ki V'Shem Kodecha Nishbata Lo, Shelo Yichben Ero Leolam Va'ed, Baruch Ata Adonai, Magen David. Al HaTorah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al ha'nevi'im, ve'al yom ha'zikaron hazeh, shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, lechavod ultifaret. Al ha'kol, Adonai Eloheinu, anachnu modim lach, umvarchim otach, yitbarach shimcha befi kol chai, tamid leolam va'ed, Udvarcha emet v'kayam la'ad, Baruch ata Adonai, Melech al kol ha'aretz, Mekadesh Yisrael, Ve'yom ha'zikaron.
Shana Tova. The year was 2013, and I was a second-year rabbinical student preparing to lead High Holy Day services for the very first time at my student pulpit in Trenton, Michigan. The High Holy Days are called the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe. In Hebrew, the word norah can mean both fear and awe, thereby perfectly summarizing how I was feeling about the task at hand. I was frightened, for I had never led High Holy Day services before. I felt inadequate and thought I would mess up. I was in awe of the tremendous task that lay before me. I was scared to lead a congregation in worship during the most important time of the year. Thankfully, that year, Rosh Hashanah went off without a hitch. I returned to Cincinnati to prepare for Yom Kippur, only to return 10 days later to drive back to my student pulpit to observe the Day of Atonement with my new community. When we prayed Kol Nidre in the evening, everything went well. Yom Kippur services the next morning went as expected. After the service, everyone exited the building to drive home before the afternoon services began, and so I took the opportunity to relax. I hung up my suit jacket, I went outside to the parking lot to get some fresh air, and then I decided it would be a good idea to call my family. Just as I went to grab my cell phone out of my pocket, the keys to the synagogue slipped out my pocket and down a storm drain that I happened to be standing directly over. I was in utter disbelief. For a while, I stood there staring down into the storm drain, my jaw nearly hitting the floor. How could I possibly let this happen, I thought. I had only been a student rabbi for 2 weeks in this congregation. I was entrusted with the keys to the synagogue, and now this? Maybe I'm not cut out to be a rabbi, I thought. My mind began racing of all the possibilities. How deep is this storm drain? Was that the only set of keys to the synagogue? What happens if they come back for Yom Kippur services and we're not able to get into the building? Or what if this was a test from God? But if it was, in fact, a test from God, it certainly did not compare to any of the divine trials and tribulations that we read about in the Torah. Take, for example, the binding of Isaac, the story we read just a few moments ago, just as we do on each Rosh Hashanah. It is perhaps the most thorough example of God putting an individual's faith and devotion to the test. In its opening verse, we read, Vayihi achar hadvarim ha'elohim nisa et Avraham. Sometime after these things, God put Abraham to the test. The sages ask, what does the opening verse mean after these things? And the rabbis are left to wonder, what was it that Abraham endured before being asked to sacrifice his son Isaac? A conversation ensues, as it normally does in rabbinic literature, where the rabbis agree that Abraham went through 10 trials by God before he was sealed as the father of the Jewish people. All but one of the commentators agrees that the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, was the final and 10th test. It can be difficult to reconcile why we read a story of near child sacrifice on the new year. For many of us, the idea that God would desire such a thing is far beyond the bounds of our personal theology. Some believe it to be a polemic against other ancient civilizations' practices of the time. Others may believe it is meant to ward off bad behavior from our children at the start of a sweet new year. Only kidding. We may never ultimately know what the original intention was for designating this story as the Torah reading on Rosh Hashanah. Nonetheless, its verses are tantalizing and its purpose on this holiday perhaps a mystery. When it is impossible to know why something is, the next best thing we can do is be mindful of how and examine why we respond in a given way. The binding of Isaac is one of those stories. There are 3 Jewish values that can be gleaned from the story of Abraham's trials that I believe are worthwhile for us to consider when trying to reconcile this difficult story and relate it to our own lives today. The first value exemplified by Abraham is perseverance. Abraham perseveres through the first 9 of the 10 trials and does so despite extreme difficulty and physical hurdles, nothing delaying him from achieving his success, the very definition of the word. As a Jewish people, our entire history is one of perseverance, from biblical times to the medieval ages, and even today, the Jewish people have never given up in the face of persecution and danger. Most often, we ascribe perseverance in only the most extreme cases, however. Seldom do we attribute perseverance in our own lives. And yet, I like to believe that we persevere each and every day when we wake up, confront our personal battles, face our broken world, engage in the imperfect relationships in our lives, and delve into the messiness of our lives today. This perspective on what it means to persevere proved to be a lifesaver for me. While in rabbinical school, I found myself at an all-time low. The pressures of graduate school and various other responsibilities, without a proper outlet or support, eventually all boiled up inside and left me feeling paralyzed for the majority of the year. In my mind, there was nothing I could do. I wasn't able to forget my troubles or the anxiety or the pressure, nor was I able to effectively tell myself that everything is going to be okay. As a result, I became depressed. And at the time, I would never thought I was demonstrating perseverance. Rather, it felt like I was barely able to survive. However, with the right support, the ability to self-advocate, the proper therapy and intervention, I became aware of my depressive tendencies and got the help that I needed. The experience helped me think differently about the meaning of perseverance. Since then, I've been able to better manage my own anxiety and depression. And yet from time to time, things do get really hard. And in those moments of personal difficulty, I consider how far I've come and the perseverance I exhibited in order to get where I am today. But most importantly, I try to remember to be kind to myself. The second value embodied by Abraham is courage. And there's no denying how much courage Abraham exhibits when he undergoes circumcision at the age of 99. Oftentimes, when we think of courage, we think of someone who exhibits strength in the face of danger or pain. We consider a daredevil to be courageous, someone who sticks up to a bully to exhibit courage. But in fact, courage doesn't denote physical strength or will. Today's understanding of the word courage has long strayed from its original meaning. The Latin root of the word courage is cor, meaning heart. In Hebrew, courage is ometz lev, which means to be strong-hearted, and more closely resembles the word's original meaning. Whereas we typically associate courage with heroic and brave deeds, in fact, our hearts are at the center of our capacity to show courage. True courage is our willingness to be vulnerable and open our hearts to something that makes us uncomfortable. Each year leading up to the Jewish New Year, our tradition provides us the opportunity to reflect upon the meaning of courage and to act in accordance to its original meaning. The last line of Psalm 27, which is read each morning in the month of Elul, ends with the words, Chazak v'yametz libecha, literally, be strong on account of your heart strength. Our task of teshuvah, repentance, on these high holy days requires from us much courage. First, we must take stock of our actions and reflect upon the times in the past year where we did not live up to our highest ideals. Next, we are asked to make amends with those we have wronged. The most difficult piece of teshuvah can be granting forgiveness. Our tradition teaches we must forgive those who make a genuine effort to apologize. Yet not all past actions are worthy of forgiveness. In those cases, we forgive for our own sake, enough, that is, to be able to move forward. Abraham displays courage by showing his vulnerability throughout all the trials and demonstrates tremendous heart strength when called upon God for his final test of sacrificing his son. Abraham, you see, was well on track to follow God's orders. He walked with his son up the mountain. He brought with him the necessary supplies and had the slaughtering knife in his hand. And it isn't until the last second when an angel of God calls to Abraham and he exhibits another important value that he ceases from going through with the sacrifice of his son. The Jewish value that ultimately saves Isaac's life is his father's ability to listen. For just as Abraham raises the knife to slaughter his son, does the angel call out, "Abraham, Abraham," to which he answers, "Hineni, here I am." Listening is a fundamental Jewish value. Being a rabbi has personally taught me the power of listening. From hospital visits to pastoral meetings, I have learned it is almost better to listen than to talk. A colleague once told me in order to be successful as a rabbi, one must make a career out of listening. But the power of listening doesn't only apply to rabbis or other helping professions. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory once taught, quote, "Listening is profoundly therapeutic. It is also deeply spiritual. The good news about the Jewish people is that we're among the world's best speakers. The bad news is that we're among the world's worst listeners. This has to change," he wrote. Too often we don't listen to understand, but we listen only to then reply. And yet the value of listening to others and feeling heard yourself is the very thing that promotes understanding, connection, deep engagement, and when required, even healing. Listening has the potential to save lives. For Abraham, listening to the angel calling his name saved his son's life. For us today, listening has the power to allow others to feel seen. The high holy days are a season when we come together in order to see each other and to see ourselves. It is the time of year to explore what it feels like to go unseen. When we feel unseen, we feel sad, scared, angry, and lonely. When we feel unseen, we feel as though our essence is not being acknowledged and that we ourselves are adrift and even alone. The high holy days recognizes this feeling of loneliness. And our liturgy reminds us that even in the moments of darkness, we are indeed loved. We are seen and we matter. At the core of our humanity, we all crave that validation of the simple fact that we indeed matter, that our existence matters. These three Jewish values espoused by Abraham in the book of Genesis, perseverance, courage, and listening, are values that I strive to uphold in my work and in my life. Be that as it may, I am far from perfecting these values. Each of us is a work in progress at living according to our own values. This new year, let's reflect upon our personal values and make a commitment to living out those values in the years to come. Now, you still may be wondering what ultimately happened to the keys to the synagogue that fell down the storm drain. Well, long story short, I spent the better part of 3 hours in between Yom Kippur morning and afternoon services laying on my stomach in the parking lot using 2 sticks that I found to fish out the set of keys before anyone got back to the temple. I doubt that was a true test from God. But what I learned from this experience is that we may never know exactly why things happen or are a certain way, but what we can determine is how we respond to a given situation and whether we learn from that situation. May this new year, 5783, be a year of uncovering our personal values and living accordingly. This new year, may we persevere. May we overcome the challenges in our lives, be mindful of the ways we persevere each and every day, and above all, be kind to ourselves along the way. This new year, may we be courageous. True courage is our capacity to lead with our heart and our willingness to show our hearts to others. This new year, may we take time to listen. True listening is our best means of making connection, allowing others to feel seen, and has the power to change lives. Shana Tova. We continue now with our Shofar Service on page 206. Page 206, I'd like to call up Neil and Alex Hoffman to lead us in the Shofar Service.
Yeah, he's going to call.
Page 206. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kichanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Source of blessing eternal, our God, you fill the universe with majestic might, summoning us to hear the sound of the shofar. Source of blessing eternal, our God, you fill the universe with majestic might, giving us life, upholding the life within us, and bringing us to this very moment.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'shmoa kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Shofarim Shua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shofarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shua. Tekiah.
Areshet sefatenu yarav lefanecha eram v'nisa. Areshet sefatenu yarav lefanecha eram v'nisa. Mevin umazin mabit umakshib lekol
268. The prophet said, "Cry aloud, lift up your voice like a shofar." This is the meaning of the verse. See yourself as a shofar, an instrument of the divine. Do not take pride in your virtue or the power of your deeds. With every mitzvah you do, every act of intellect, goodness, and love, God's Spirit breathes through you.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Shivarim Shua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shivarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shua. Tekiah.
הרשת צוותנו ירב לפניך הרם ונישא הרשת צוותנו ירב לפניך הרם ונישא מבין ומשים מביט ומקשיב לכל תקיעתנו ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון, שדה זיכרונותינו.
Page 284. Page 284. If you are able, please rise for the third and final shofar call.
Tekiah. Shivarim Shua. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shivarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shua. Tekiah Gedolah.
הרשת צוותנו ירב לפניך הרם ונישא הרשת צוותנו ירב לפניך הרם ונישא מבין ומקסים מביט ומקשיב לכל תקיעתנו ותקבל ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון, שדה שופרותינו.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Alex. We continue now with Aleinu L'Shabeach. Please remain standing. We continue now on page 286, page 286 at the top of the page.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה לו יוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגר עלינו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתוקקים
We continue with the reading before the mourner's Kaddish at the top of page 290 at the top of the page together. An autumn sonnet. If I can let you go as trees let go, their leaves so casually one by one, if I can come to know what they do know, that fall is the release, the consummation, then fear of time and the uncertain fruit would not distemper the great lucid skies. This strangest autumn, mellow and acute, if I can take the dark with open eyes and call it seasonal, not harsh or strange, for love itself may need a time of sleep, and tree-like stand unmoved before the change, lose what I lose to keep what I can keep, the strong roots still alive under the snow. Love will endure if I can let you go. We continue on page 292. If you are in a period of Shiva or Shloshim, the first 30 days, or the first 7 or 30 days of mourning, and would like to share a name of a loved one, I invite you to do so at this time. If you are observing a yahrzeit, the anniversary of someone's death, and would like to share their name out loud or in your heart, please do so at this time. This Rosh Hashanah marks the yahrzeit, the anniversary of the passing of the following individuals: Abe Simon, Bertha Barron, Bessie Cohn, Betty Felberbaum, Beverly Berman, Bunny Kerwin, Dr. Lenice Dolan, Dr. Leonard Goldberg, Dr. Robert Levin, Dr. William Boniface, Eleanor Dinkin, Ethel Lerner Stromberg, Ava Mumm, Herman S. Cohn, Jean Gothelf, Joellen Davidoff, Judith Kahn, Marvin Wick, Morris Stein, Pauline Spector, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Shirley Metlin, Stanley J. Grimes, Sylvia Zimov, Thomas Federer, and Frida Hofheimer. If you would like to just share the name of someone who you lost, want to bring their name and their spirit into this space, I invite you to do so at this time. We rise as one community for all of those named, unnamed, and for those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We join together in the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish, page 292. Yit gadal v'yit gadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach cherte v'amlich malchute, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, b'gala uv'izman kariv emru amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevarach Leolam Ulmeo Maya Yitbarach Vishtabach Vitpa'ar Vitma'an Vitnaseh Vitadar Vitale Vitalal Shemei Kudusha Berechu Leila Ulamel Mikol Birchata V'Shirata Tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'ama v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to all of us, peace to this broken world in which we live, and comfort to all of those who are bereaved, to which we say amen. Please be seated.
All right, friends, we're almost there. So a few brief announcements. Tashlich, so there's a ritual of Tashlich, which will happen at the pond in the front. So if you want, you can skip the receiving line and go straight to that area. Our rabbinic fellow, Ben, he already out there setting up. We'll be out there to meet you if you want. The protocol for the receiving line, it's totally what you want, but your clergy will exit really quickly out front and be in a line, and so you're welcome to greet us. You're also welcome to skip us and go straight to lunch. Either way, we totally understand. There is a luncheon here this year, so if you have not made reservations, just ask Jenny and we'll figure it out. So anyone should have a place to go, and everyone should have a place to eat. So please let us know and join us for that. Also, tomorrow we will having Rosh Hashanah Day 2 services at Temple Sholom at 10:30, led by the same similar team, so you're welcome to that. We will not be streaming that one, so sorry, online community. Also, there are bags for food, so please grab those, bring them back to the next service so that we can, oh, Jenny's saying, no, do not bring them back. Bring them to Temple Sholom or to a food bank of your choice. Sounds like, okay. Also, this takes a lot of energy to put together. And our Yom Kippur, it's our hardest one to break it all down afterwards. So if you would like to give the mitzvah of helping us out on Yom Kippur, please let Jenny know. We do need volunteers to help with that process. Also, our whole community is going to Israel in 2024. Very exciting. And there's going to be significant subsidies to make it happen. So everyone who wants to go to Israel should be able to go in some capacity. You'll be seeing lots of literature and information as we go forward, but we'd love to go with you. And if it's your first time, that's wonderful. It's your 17th time, that's wonderful. We want you to join us. I want to thank all the ushers and those who helped with the welcome table or readers for making today happen. Thank you to our board and our committees. Thank you especially to our president, Neil Hoffman, his wonderful wife, Aaron, Alex, and Jacob, for everything you do to lead our community. Thank you to our wonderful tour readers today, Nikki Stratford and Jerry Kersner. Thank you to John Bunyan for your gorgeous riffing poem on the Akedah. That was super fun. To Ed Goldman for your gorgeous original work with Hannah. It's so important to keep these things alive. Thank you, of course, to Dr. Mark Bailey for your music and for lifting us. Dr. Acord for your gorgeous voice. To Dr. Grant, Peggy Grant, for bringing your oboe into this. It's such a beautiful way to bring it. Thank you to Micah Druschel, who made all this AV possible for our online community and for those of us in the room. Thank you, of course, to our incredible staff, Jenny Costello, Mary Jo McLean, Micaiah Sebastian, and Batya Sullivan for everything you do. You've been here for hours. Thank you. And, of course, to our clergy who, the guys had a little harder than me today. They had to do the kids' service and back here and all that different energy. So thank you to our rabbinic fellow, Ben Rosen, and, of course, to my clergy partner, Rabbi Simon Stratford, for your amazing words of wisdom and for just being a wonderful partner in all this. So thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone. And so what we're going to do is I would like to bless you all, and then we'll sing Elokeinu and go forward. So Do what feels right to feel like you can receive. Okay. May your blood pressure and all that junk mail and those spam calls, especially during election season in Ohio, decrease. May your internet speed and your wisdom and your popularity increase. May your neighbor's roaring lawnmower break down. May the F words in your life actually stand for forgiveness, so that you can forgive your enemies as nothing annoys them more. And may all 7 billion people in this world who have just endured a global pandemic wear masks, wash their hands, breathe in clean skies, experience enough love to make it through yet another season without destroying our world. I wish you enough hellos to those that you love to get you through the final goodbyes that we must take from one another. And should you ever feel alone or unloved, may you know that you are never truly alone, for God is with you, in you, and loves you, and so do I. May the Mashiach come this year, and if he does not, may you live as if she has, and may you be blessed with the happiest, healthiest, sweetest, and most peaceful year of your life. And together we say, Amen, Shana Tova. We'll conclude with Ein Keloheinu on page 299. Shofar blowers up to the bima for our final shofar call, and as we're walking them up, why don't we do a little Birkat Kohanim?
Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yair Adonai, panav elecha v'yikunecha, Yisa. Adonai panav elecha, v'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom, shalom, v'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom, v'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom, shalom, v'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom, v'yasem lecha shalom.
Very rare in the city do you get to see a duo between the temple president and the preeminent scholar in our city do a duo for shofar. So here we go. Shana Tova.